Okay, today so we're going to look again at these generative drum sounds. Generative being events and music created first by a single MIDI clip and then altered and changed according to parameters that we set. So let's first of all delete these two audio tracks. We're going to add another couple of MIDI tracks by typing Command-Shift-T once, twice, so we've got a total of 4 MIDI tracks. Let's go through and name those now. Going to keep the hashtag there. Clicking on the title bar, Command-R, hashtag keeps the number there, and it makes the numbering dynamic as well, but I won't go into that now. This can be the note. Tab across to the next one, hashtag kick, hashtag snare, hashtag hats. All right, from there, I'm going to just double click in this first slot. I'm going to add a single, zoom in a little bit first of all, double click here to add a C3, middle C, want it to be 1/16th in duration, and I'm not going to worry about the velocity. Next thing I want to do is go to turn on the MIDI, the audio and MIDI in and out routing section of Ableton Live. There's two ways I can do that. The one I just did then was by typing Command-Option-I. The other way you can do it is over here where the mouse is. Click the in and out. It doesn't matter which way, but there's two ways, many ways to skin this particular cat. So I'm going to go select the MIDI from for these notes, all to receive this first channel, that single note. Like that. I'm going to put them all to monitor so that we're monitoring the input rather than what's any events that could be in these slots here. So if I click that, you'll see that with that single MIDI event is firing across here. Until we put a virtual instrument on any of these tracks, nothing's going to be heard. We've just got the MIDI note there. So next, let's put some samples in, some kick, snare, and hats. I'm going to use the 909 drum machine presets, sample presets that come stock with Live for no reason apart from the fact that they're there, and they're simple, easy to use, and they sound pretty good. So we're going to bring up the browser in Ableton Live and the search functionality. I've already got 909 written there, but if you don't, type in 909 and then go across here to drums. This is going to be all of the 909 drums. Drum hits, open that up. Let's go down to kick. I can click these. They'll auto preview as long as I've got that little icon lit here. And I can hear all those. And I'm quite happy with the sound of that. So I can listen to any of these. I'm not going to labor over it too much. I'm just going to select the first one. To add this to the MIDI track here, what I'm going to do is double click at the top, and it's going to bring up this drop an instrument or sample here, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to drop a sample there. It automatically converts that file into a note in a sampler window. This is a sampler which is actually called Simpler. Ableton has two samplers. One is called Simpler, one is called Sampler. The Simpler is, as you can imagine, the simpler of the two. Has less functionality, but it's a really good little sampler that you can do. It's very powerful nonetheless. So let's do the same thing, looking for 909 sounds, snare sounds. First of all, let's just go for a nice little short punchy one. Same process again. I'm going to double click on the track header and I'm going to drag the sample in there. And now you can see we've got a bass drum and a snare drum being triggered. You'll notice when the dots, when the channel strip LEDs are like this, that's a MIDI event. When they look like this, that's an audio event. And the difference between an audio and a MIDI track is best seen by this little icon at the bottom. A time, some kind of time clock there represents a MIDI track. If I add an audio track just for reference by doing Command T, you'll see that it's a standard, what looks like a record button there. But I'm going to take that out. Let's do the same thing with the hats. Double click on the header there, drop an instrument or sample here. So select a sample, nice closed hat sound, and drop it in there. So now I've got my 3 events all happening at once. So far from being a dynamic rhythm, let's add some more effects and some MIDI effects and some audio effects and see if we can create some music out of these. That 1/16th note is still powering all of this, and see if we can get this going into some kind of music. First of all, we're going to add some MIDI effects. Ableton Live comes with a number of MIDI effects that allow you to manipulate MIDI. Not a lot of digital audio workstations have this, so it's kind of unique to Ableton Live, and it's really, really powerful and allows us to make these kinds of these types of generative music sets, and kind of turns your computer into an instrument. So I'm going to grab this arpeggiator, put one instance of it on all of the inputs here. And not only can you use arpeggiators for running up and down chords and arpeggiating chords, you can actually use it to create running notes on a single note. And the way we do that is, I'm going to start with a kick drum, and I'm going to solo that. And I'm also going to solo the adjacent channel so that note is still being heard. I could actually go here, and once I click that hold, it holds that note pulse indefinitely until another one's heard a different pulse. We've got 1/8 notes. I'm going to slow down the rate of to quarter notes. I could go down to once a bar, half notes, a triplet, a minimum triplet, a quarter note, all these different types. And you'll notice there as it gets faster, it actually becomes a pitch note. But anyway, we're going to go for a 4 on the floor beat like that. So now if we focus our attention on the snare, by command clicking the solo button, I can get the snare on, and by command clicking that solo, I can turn it off. So the snare is occurring once a bar. Is it? Yeah, only on the start of the bar. So if we put the hold on again, we've got 1/8 notes. The snare drum in this pattern and in a lot of patterns occurs twice a bar, every 2 beats. But if I have a listen to all of these together now, and I stop it and then start it again, you'll notice that the snare falls on beats 1 and 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. I want to flip that so that the snare falls on the 2 and 4 beats. I want to delay it in time. So the best way for me to delay something is using a digital delay. I'm going to use, in the audio effects section here, I'm going to pull up the simple delay. Just drag it on top of it like that. And of course, you can hear it's added some rhythmic values now. If my search browser, my browser was not visible, I can hide it and show it there. I can also hide it and show it by Command Option B. And the other quick way, if I've got everything closed off like that, I can actually do Command F, and straight away it brings me into the search box, and I could type delay, and it brings up 4 different delay effects. The one I'm using is simple delay. Currently you can see the simple delay, it's got a left and a right delay value, and that's just a basic ping pong delay with feedback and a dry wet value. No delay, only delay, halfway between the two. So in order to delay this 1 beat, I'm going to link both the left and the right delay so that we've basically got a mono delay with only 1 value now. And so in doing that, these are 16th notes. I now have the snare drum playing twice every beat, If I go this side, now I've got my snare drum only playing on the second and fourth beat. And to show you that, I'll stop the track. We're going to hit play, and we can hear it at 1, 2, 3, 4. Pretty simple stuff. Let's go to the hats now. We're going to turn the hat channel on. You can turn the channels on and off in Ableton by either typing 4 or just clicking on the 4 there. So we've got the hi-hats here. Going to double click in the header there. We've got an arpeggiator on this one as well, which is great. I'm going to change the hi-hats. I'm going to put the hold on so that they're running for the entire bar. And I'm going to change it from fourth notes. It's kind of nice playing a 3 against 4 triplet pattern, but I'm going to set it to quarter notes. And there's your stock standard first pattern you learn in your first drum lesson. I can add a simple delay and start messing with some simple frequencies, some simple delay settings. Again, if I link it, so we've got a single delay, I could add 2 16th notes, which is equivalent to an 8th, and I get a nice 8th pattern on the hats. The nice thing about this is I can actually use the dry and wet to accent. There we have the original note, the 1, 2, 3, 4 quarter note, and I can use this delay to introduce the 8th notes. When it's shifted to the left-hand side here on the accenting, it's playing more of the dry signal, I get the accenting falling on each downbeat. And as I swing it across here, it's getting a little bit more of a ska or a more of a house feel, accenting the upbeats. And if I go right across to 100% wet, I've got your bog standard house beat there. Just going to bring the hats down a little bit in volume. So great. You can see we can muck around with that, play around with the feedback as well. Change lots of things. So what I'm going to do now is show you how to group effects into what's called into an audio effects rack. And the reason why we do this is so we can group multiple parameters and assign them to a single controller. I'm going to do it first of all with the snare drum. I'm going to click on the snare header. I've still got my delay search in the box up here. Now I'm going to drag the filter down, filter delay onto the snare. Straight off, we've got some delays happening. A little bit of housekeeping now. Let's put the pan of all of these delays, rather than being left, right, this one's straight up the middle. I'm going to put them all to the middle by clicking on the parameter, typing 0, and going like that. Enter, right up the middle. Feedback, 0. So we've got a single repeat from all of these notes. I'm going to put all those volumes to 0. So this means that those delays have the exact same volume as the dry signal. And I'm also going to turn these filters off for the time being. And we can hear we've got some different rhythms happening. That's great. But what I want to do is be able to control these a little bit more musically according to what I think, to create a little bit of a delay, an array of delays that allow me to play it like an instrument, if you will. So I'm going to set the first delay time to 1/16, the second to 2/16, and the third to the 3rd 16th. So you can hear now that I'm getting 4/16 all at the same volume from that first snare pulse. I can start messing with these feedbacks. Start getting some different delays and variants there. And I can also adjust the volume up to 6 dB above. And getting some accents on these delayed notes. There's a kind of Manchesterish beat of sorts. So let's turn all the delays back on. Set this back to 0. Click on the header the title bar of this device, we can either right click and group it, or we can just click on the header and type Command G to group it as well, which is great. Now we've got, this is tucked into an audio effect rack. If I open the audio effect rack controls, I'll see that I've got macro controls, which is what we want to use. I've also got some chain controls. As I scroll across like this, or alternatively I can do it down the bottom there to bring the different devices into view. I can actually streamline my view by double clicking in any of the device title bars. The things that I'm happy, they're set, and I can forget. A little bit of housekeeping there to keep things tidy. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get the volume of this and I'm going to map it to this first macro control. Let me turn this one to the next. And now I've got the ability to turn those up as I see fit. I'm going to name these by typing Command R, 1/16 for the first 16th. I'll tab to the next value, 2/16 for the second 16th note, and 3/16 for the third. This next one here, I'm going to map the feedback to and do some other things as well. You'll see feedback on 2 lines. That's the way it's going to be. And I'm going to get the feedback for all of these. Right click, map to feedback, right click, map to feedback. And you can see there, I'm pulling the feedback up for all of them. And as I add the delays in, you can hear I'm getting some kind of loose dub delay effect. So I'll just leave that running. Like that. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these filters. I'm going to turn the filters on. So now I've got a filter delay, and I'm going to take the filter frequency and I'm going to map each of these to the corresponding macros. If I color these macros, you'll see a little bit perhaps more cleanly what I'm doing. So right clicking on them, I want these to be paired. The colors I'm choosing is arbitrary. So each of these 16th note delays, I'm going to map the frequency for each below it. And the color is a little bit of a visual guide. So to this frequency to number 6, this one to number 7. All right. So now, as I'm messing with these, you can see my filters can adjust the sound further. And we're going to some more subtle values like this. I can start introducing, different rhythms and different grooves. And a little bit more advanced technique I'm going to show you now is the ability to actually turn these filters on and off using another knob. What I might do here is use this feedback knob for multiple parameters. Not only is it going to be for feedback across there, but I'm also going to map all of these filter on and off buttons to that. Like that. And as I get to a certain point, you'll see the filters turn orange as they're being switched on. I want to be able to control the point at which the filters turn on, and thankfully in Live I can do that. If I click this map button here for my rack that I've created, and as I color this one as well, so I'm continuing to see the colors that I play with here, I can actually set high and low points. First thing I'm going to do is change the low point for the filters so that the lowest they can go is about 120 Hertz. I don't care for it to go down to all the way to 50 Hertz. So now the lowest, as I pull this filter, you'll notice that it can go. I'll turn the mapping off. Have a look in this window. The frequency there at the lowest point is 120 now. Previously, it was 50. And it keeps things in a more audible frequency range as opposed to going right down into the sub-frequencies. And with snare drums, I don't have much of that action, so I don't really care for it. So this feedback, we're going to tune this further so that the filter on, I'm going to type a value 1 in that box and 0 in this. And you'll see as I turn this knob now, if I turn it to 0, the filters turn off. This is the only one I want you to be looking at for the moment. Turn it on. As soon as I get above 0, you'll notice the filters get turned on. So if I turn it to 20, as soon as I get above a value of 20, that's when the filter gets turned on. So that means that the first few percent of my feedback, I'm going to get the sound coming through unfiltered. I reckon 30 is going to be the magic number for these. So I'm going to type 30 in here. 30 is the on point. And 0. There we go. I'll go out of map mode. So now you can see with it at a value of 80, the filters are all on. And as I pull the feedback back, you see that it goes like that. They turn off all at the same value. I'm going to get one more thing and add it to this feedback circuit. I'm also going to add the resonance or the bandwidth of this filter to this. And now you'll see as I roll up, it gets wider, the bandwidth. And then as I take it down, it gets narrower. What I'm going to do is actually change that, the filter width, so that it doesn't get all the way to 0. I'm going to have it at about maybe 4. You can experiment with these settings yourself. Actually, I want it to be a bit more dramatic than that, so I might change the high point. I'll keep the low points right down, and I'll change the highest point to about 6. Experimentation's the key here. And so it gets narrow, quite narrow, and then eventually it pops off. So it allows me to do some kind of fade out with my filters here. I can muck around with them. And then if I want to stop the filters from feeding back like this, the delays with the filters on them, I pull it back. I've got one more macro that I could add something to, and I'm going to do it just because we can. I'm going to go, if you don't have the browser open, type Command Option B, or quicker still, Command F to open it straight into browser, and I'm going to add the saturator. And what I'm going to do is put this in line in this whole chain by dragging it there, and now you'll see that this saturator, which is an analog distortion style effect, I'm going to add it there. I'm going to turn the drive up until it gets a little bit broken sounding. There's lots of different curves. You can hear different sounds and different amounts of distortion. What I'm going to do is map this last control, the dry wet control, to here, and I could call it saturation or distortion, disto. Give it a red color so that I know that this one is my turn up the heat button. And you can hear we go progressively from a not very distorted sound to a more distorted sound, should I want that to be the case. It helps fatten the sound. You can probably hear as if I bypass the saturator. It goes a long way to making it sound more fat and, for want of a better term, ready for the mix ready. And also enables me, when I'm playing with my feedback circuit, go for a even more distorted and lo-fi sound on my delays. I can accent different notes, so I can make the second 16th note the accent. Got to make it the only note. So that's great. Now the next thing I want to show you is the ability to assign these different parameters to an interactive control, which is what this course is all about. So to do this, I'm going to type Command K, and I'm going to click on the first 16th note here, click on the keyboard number 1, add it to that, number 2 to this one, number 3, and my feedback I'm going to add to number 4. For the filter frequencies, I'm just going to go directly under those keys. A little bit illogical perhaps, but Q, W, E, and R, so that I've just got the keys above and below each other from 1 to 4, Q, W, E, R, those first ones. For these to take effect, I have to make sure that this icon over here is not lit, because if it is, it will turn my keyboard on the computer into a MIDI keyboard. So I'm going to make sure that it's not lit. And then I'm going to type the number 1, and it's going to turn this off. 2, 3, and so on and so forth. Some of these parameters are best assigned to a MIDI controller or a continuous controller of some sort, a pot or a fader. Very easy to do. To do so, you type Command M, and then click on the effect. Click on the knob you want to assign, and I've got my MIDI controller down here. Just turn a knob, and it automatically maps it like that. Really simple, really easy. So I could actually turn those with my little trusty MIDI controller off screen here. So lots of ways of interacting with Ableton Live and lots of ways of making music. So I can turn the first 16th on using button number 1. The next 16th on button number 2. Button number 3. Add some feedback. And I can muck around with these parameters below. I can make that completely distorted with my, or completely bypassed. And with my continuous MIDI controller, you can see here that I can affect these guys down the bottom. I'm going to map them again. Command M for a MIDI controller, just by clicking on it, going through for a different control for each, and now I've got all of these knobs allow me to play my snare drum without sticks, but with a series of pots. So there you have our audio effect rack that we can use for creating new rhythms from very little. What I can do now is I could actually click on the title rack for this. I can call Apple R delay 16ths, I'm going to call it. Delay 16ths. I can click the save icon here. Just drag it out of the browser like that, and I'm good to go. And now I've got one of those on the bass drum. Same thing, a bit of distortion on the bass drum. Lots of feedback, some extra notes. And I could actually put one of these onto the hi-hats as well. Easy way of doing that is to either Command C to copy it, just click on the header like that, type where I want it, click where I want it to go down here, Command V. I've got the same thing happening with my hi-hats here, and I can set it how I see fit. And there you have it, the ability to create a whole lot of music off that single note. You can see it firing away in the background here. Great thing about Ableton, of course, is that once I'm happy with this, I can push stop here, make it go back to the start. And as long as I've got this icon here enabled to record all of my automation, I hit record here, fire here. You notice that this is all being recorded into the arrangement view, and any of the macro changes that I make to each track are recorded as automation events. See here, all of the automation events that I've done on this track has been recorded. So now I start out with that static sound, and I can start changing it and affecting it and create an arrangement out of it that I can then change into a song as I see fit. So you can see all of those little automation curves have been written. This button here actually allows me to display multiple automation curves at one time. And I'll see these around the bottom here getting moved around per the automation curves that's gone. Delay racks. That's all I wanted to show you today. So I just want you to have fun and experiment with some delay racks.